You're probably standing in front of the TV aisle, scrolling through endless options, wondering if any of these big screen marvels will actually deliver the experience you crave without draining your wallet. It's a real headache because you don't want to spend a fortune on a set that looks great on paper but falls flat when you finally sit down to watch a movie or fire up a game. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When I started looking at 48-inch OLEDs, the first thing that came up was the Sony XR48A90K. At first glance it reads like a marketing sheet. 4K, XR processor, wide color gamut, but the real question is whether those claims translate into everyday enjoyment. I dug through forums, watched a handful of YouTube deep dive videos, and read the handful of user comments that actually mention day-to-day use. What emerged was a picture that feels almost cinematic in a living room that isn't a dedicated home theater, plus a few practical quirks that matter once the box is open. Let's start with the setup. The 48-inch panel is big enough to dominate a typical apartment wall but small enough that you don't need a massive viewing distance to hit that sweet spot. I mounted the unit on a standard Visa bracket, and the process was straightforward thanks to Sony's relatively slim bezel and clear mounting holes. The included HDMI 2.1 ports were a pleasant surprise. You can connect a next-gen console and actually use the full 120Hz mode without needing an adapter. That's something you don't get with a lot of OLEDs in this size class. Now, picture quality. Sony's intelligent TV processing lives up to its name. The algorithm does a good job of upscaling lower resolution content, so a Blu-ray that's only 1080p suddenly looks sharper, and streaming services that push 4K HDR feel more detailed. The wide spectrum of colors isn't just a buzzword when you watch a nature documentary. The greens in a rainforest appear richer than what you see on most LED panels. Blacks are truly black. The OLED technology lets each pixel turn off completely, which means you get that infinite contrast you read about in reviews. One thing I tested repeatedly was motion handling. Sports fans and gamers both care about how quickly a TV can keep up with fast action. With the XR processor's motion interpolation turned off, fast-moving scenes still feel clean, and there's no noticeable soap opera effect that some LED TVs introduce. When I played a fast-paced racing game, the image stayed crisp, and there was almost no input lag, which is a big plus for anyone who wants a console as a primary gaming device. That said, the set isn't without trade-offs. OLEDs are famous for their perfect blacks, but they typically lag behind the brightest LEDs in very well-lit rooms. If your living space has large windows and you watch TV during the day with the curtains open, you'll notice a slight washout in the brightest highlights. It's not a deal-breaker for most, but if you're planning to mount the TV in a sun-flooded kitchen or a floor-to-ceiling glass office, you might want to consider a high-brightness LED instead. Another practical concern is the potential for image retention, sometimes called burn-in. Sony has added pixel shift and screensaver routines that move static logos a few pixels every few minutes, which helps, but the risk isn't zero. If you frequently leave a news ticker or a static gaming HUD on for long sessions, you should be mindful. For most movie and show watchers, the risk is minimal, especially with the 2-year Amber protection plan that comes with the bundle. An extra peace of mind if you're nervous about that possibility. Sound is often an afterthought, but it matters if you don't plan to invest in a separate soundbar right away. The XR48A90K uses Sony's acoustic surface audio technology, where the screen itself vibrates to produce sound. In a quiet room, dialogue feels clear and the bass is surprisingly punchy for a TV that thin. However, when you crank the volume for an action movie, you'll start to hear the limitations. Bass rolls off quickly and the overall loudness can't match a dedicated speaker system. Pairing it with a modest soundbar will instantly close that gap. The smart platform is another area where the TV shows its experience. Sony's Google TV interface is smooth, and you get voice control through the remote or any Google Assistant device you already own. I appreciated